Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Wow. We have got some really exciting news for you guys. Our forum has now been fully integrated with the main Loving Life TV platform, meaning that any person who is already registered on the main Loving Life TV platform can, like with 24/7 chat, post articles and comments in the forum, which has over 30 different major subject areas and close to 1,000 articles on it already. So it's a huge forum. It's growing. Please participate. And it's a big shout out to Rudy and Nat for making this possible. As I just mentioned, please go and check out our forums. And if you have a topic you would like to add, contact Nat, our forum admin. You will see her email address under the Contact Us link at the top of Loving Life TV. Tonight I'm talking to Damian Enslin, who heads up SAGA, or South African Gun Owners Association. We will be talking about the new FCA bill, which has been introduced by the ANC government and will, if passed, relinquish the rights of citizens to own a gun for self-defense purposes. Clearly a very disturbing situation in a country with a crumbling police force and with one of the highest crime rates in the world. So what are the objectives of SAGA? 1. SAGA is passionate about and believe in the right of law-abiding and responsible citizens who choose to own and use firearms for self-defense, for sport shooting, hunting, recreation, business, or other legitimate purposes. 2. SAGA negotiate with government and other bodies for practical and logical reforms. And thirdly, SAGA actively promote the safe handling and safe storage of firearms for legal storage. I'm going to get Damian on now. Please remember to subscribe to Loving Life on YouTube and register on our new lovinglifetv.com platform. That's the place to be. Here we go. I'm going to get Damian on now. Hi, Damian.
Hi, Scott. How are you doing there?
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. There you go. Now I see you. Perfect. Right. Now, Damian, we live in interesting times in South Africa, don't we?
Indeed, we do. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. And your organization, one could say, is at the forefront of the battle against a crazy amendment that's been proposed for the gun ownership laws. First of all, tell us, what is SAGA, your organization, the South African Gun Owners Association?
Sure. We're one of the oldest firearm rights groups in South Africa, organizations, and we've been running for just over about 36 years now. And originally it was formulated with respect to the Regional Arms and Ammunition Act of '69. There were changes coming afoot even in the mid-'80s, which would have affected the right to own firearms for self-defense or sport shooting or hunting purposes. So it was established in the mid-'80s, 1985 to be exact. And we as SAGA believe in the right of all law-abiding citizens to have a choice to own firearms, whether it be for self-defense, sport shooting, hunting, collectors, or for business purposes. So we obviously look after the interests of lawful firearm owners. We lobby Parliament. We try to introduce real and practical resolutions or solutions to problems. We obviously engage with the police on a regular basis. We engage across the spectrum of all of society, organizations, political parties. We're apolitical, we're non-racist. We believe in the right of a law-abiding citizen to choose to own a firearm for whatever purpose he or she deems fit. So we're quite a well-run organization. We've got a real depth of knowledge and skills. We've got a good board of trustees. And I'm the current chairperson of the board.
Right. Now, we have a crazy situation in South Africa where the South African Police Service often is the party that actually rents out guns to gangs. Look, I know this isn't basically what you do, but you must have your head around what's going on in that area.
Yes.
What are the government doing to try and stop this happening? And I'm talking about Bekesele and people like that.
It is very concerning. It seems like government doesn't have the wherewithal or the strength of character to actually tackle the issue head on. We've had major concerns for many, many years now of the legal guns and how legal guns get into the pool. And we're very aware that, unfortunately, the police, because of corruption, many of the guns that find their hands into the criminals' hands, where in the criminals' hands are unfortunately from the police pool of firearms, of course, as well as SADF and other sort of quasi-government entities as well. And we have been talking about this for a long time, and we have been saying to SAPS and to government, they should have special task force units again that deals with illegal guns, because that is the real crux, the real problem is illegal guns. And it seems like there's just not enough effort or not enough resources being allocated to that issue. And I'm in touch on a daily basis. I'm also a practicing attorney that deals with firearm issues. So I'm dealing with the whole spectrum of from bottom to top. So from at a police station level, at a provincial level, various parts of the police force that I'm dealing with on a daily basis, and they're all complaining about lack of resources and lack of sort of strength of character, I think, on the part of government to try and deal with the main issue. And certainly we strongly believe that the real main issue for violent crime in South Africa is the legal guns, and the fact that there isn't enough police crime intelligence, not enough resources have been allocated to tackle that issue head on.
Right. Well, I understand that it's something like tens of thousands of guns that have actually gone missing from the police.
Indeed.
Yeah. And millions of rounds.
Yes.
You know, that is just extraordinary.
It's crazy. It's just crazy. You know, in where we're meant to be a developed society, developed democracy, where government's meant to be working for us, and that just seems to be, there seems to be no, intent on the part of government, true intent to try and sort the problem out. Everyone realizes that is the problem. I was at a firearms summit in 2015, and that was one of the issues that was raised at that summit, was the fact that illegal guns are a problem, and government must do something about the legal guns. How are these guns coming across from the border? We know that some police officers, and of course Colonel Chris Prinsloo has been in the news multiple times about the way that he sold guns to gangsters. But if it just doesn't make sense to us at all that government is not tackling this issue properly and correctly and getting the root of the problem.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think it matters which government department you look at. They're basically all incompetent. They just are not doing the job. Now,
Yeah.
talking about the government, what is the process in South Africa when bringing in a new law like the FCA bill?
Sure. So what we're dealing with at the moment is a draft bill, a draft piece of legislation. And this has emanated now from the Civilian Secretariat on Police, which is a body that's meant to function between the citizens and the police, sort of an oversight body. And they appear to have been tasked with the drafting of this bill. What happens from here onwards, we have a period within which to lodge submissions, to make submissions. And that period ends on the 4th of July. And what we doing, what SAGA is doing at the moment, and many other organizations doing at the moment, is making submissions against the bill. So we are objecting entirely to the entire bill. Just but none of that bill is workable. And so we're going to be making submissions against it. So that's where the citizens of South Africa and the organizations of South Africa are entitled to make submissions, and the Civilian Secretariat must seriously consider those submissions in terms of the ambit and in terms of the parameters of Civilian Secretariat. Then what will happen after that? So once that period closes off for submissions to the draft bill, the Civilian Secretariat is meant to obviously peruse all those submissions, take cognizance of those submissions, and then the next level typically is to the Portfolio Committee on Police, and then the bill is debated there, and obviously again, citizens of South Africa as well as the various organizations will be entitled to make submissions again and try and sort of either kick it out completely or somehow fix the problems. But I think there's nothing to be fixed here. I think it's just the whole bill in itself is entirely a problem. Thereafter, the normal course is the Portfolio Committee will vote on it and decide whether it's a good bill or not, or reject it. They can reject it there and then. They can say there's a problem here, it must go back. There's too many issues with this bill. If they accept it, adopt it, then it goes to the National Council of Provinces. Again, it goes through a process of being debated upon. It can also get rejected, accepted there. At that point, it can go back for various amendments if needs be. And then finally, the National Assembly obviously is where the entire Parliament will vote on the bill. And again, they can reject it, they can accept it, adopt it. And if it gets accepted, then the next level is the President will potentially sign into law. Of course, the President, we know with other pieces of legislation, can also reject it and send it back down. So there is a long process still to go, Scott, and we are entitled as citizens of South Africa and organizations to try and impact or deal with the bill along the way and try and sort of either get it rejected completely or amended. But I don't see it any portion of it being acceptable to us at all.
Right. Well, the only people who would be celebrating this bill passing are those with illegal guns, because then they can go and break into people's houses and not worry about having, someone with a gun confronting them.
Absolutely.
It's a crazy situation, and what's even crazier, this is an area that I've been watching very closely, is the actual influence of organizations or NGOs like Open Society Foundation, which is obviously George Soros's organization. They apparently are involved in the drafting of the bill, which is going to be put to the Parliament.
Well, that is a big issue for us. We are stakeholders and we are role players, and we've been asking government and Civilian Secretariat for many years now. So going back to the Firearms Summit of 2015, which seemed to be a really positive development on the part of Parliament and the Civilian and the Portfolio Committee on Police. And at that summit, there was an understanding there that all the role players should be involved in this process. And unfortunately, that has not transpired. I can tell you there's none of the organizations, the farm rights organizations, or none of the sports shooting bodies, hunting bodies, collector associations. No one has been consulted, and that is a big issue for us, that government would seek to consult with other external entities and other organizations that are clearly not pro-gun or anti-gun, and not consult with us. We have a lot to say. We have a lot of positive ideas and ways of trying to rework the current legislation to make it work for the police and assist the police in rooting out illegal firearms and rooting out the problems. And government just doesn't seem to want to engage with us. And so we've been trying very, very hard over the last few years to try and engage and try and work some sort of sustainable solution when it comes to the current Firearms Control Act. As you're also aware, there's a major problem with administration through the entire spectrum of the Firearms Control Act. The police obviously is the main government entity that deals with the Firearms Control Act. And from a station level to provincial level to a national level at CFR, there's just an administrative problem. It's just something they can't seem to fix. And we've dealt with this before, 2009, 2010, 2015. Many parliamentary reports have come out about the state of the disarray of the whole system and the administration. And again, it's a lack of resources, a lack of quality officials, proper training of the police. And we are saying, let's get that right, get the administration right of the current Firearms Control Act. It's not perfect. There are things that need to be fixed and corrected. But the solution is not trying to bring a new bill in. That's not going to make crime go away. That's not going to make the illegal guns go away. You and I know that criminals will always find a plan. All other sort of societies within the world have tried to outlaw guns. The criminals will always make a plan. That's their job. That's their profession as a criminal, is to get the tools of the trade. And they're going to make they're going to make a plan to get the firearms they need for their crimes and that.
Yeah, well, look, the thing that I find terribly disturbing about how laws are enacted in South Africa is that more often than not, those bills or laws or acts are actually drafted by members of what is the Open Society Foundation. And it's not just this bill that we're talking about here. The bill for expropriation without compensation is being drafted by Professor Ruth Hall from PLAS, which is funded by the Open Society Foundation. It's based at the University of Cape Town. You can look up their website. You can see there they talk about their work with the expropriation without compensation. It's all there. It's all open. And when Thabo Mbeki came into power as the president, most of his advisors were senior staff of Open Society Foundation. Now, they are not democratically elected by anybody. In fact, they are destroying Europe with what they're doing with the illegal immigrants and stuff like that. And look what they're doing in America with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Their whole role is to destroy society because they're trying to bring in the New World Order. Now, in South Africa, what they're doing with expropriation without compensation, trying to remove licenses from people who want to defend themselves, is clearly to have a very negative impact on stability in South Africa. Isn't that a big problem, having an organization like that with those sort of powers?
I really can't comment on that. I can't comment on those type of issues and that. But what I can say, what I'm feeling very positive about is that civilian society and South Africans in general are united about certain issues. And one of the issues they've certainly united about is the opposition to this bill. So I find that there are a lot of positives out there, and I was interviewed on a radio station, KwaZulu-Natal, and it's amazing how suddenly this bill has solidified a lot of South Africa. Sometimes we are divided along certain lines and that, but this is the one bill where I find that most people I've spoken to, all creeds, all races, all types, are united against this bill because they see that they just can't believe, they can't understand how government could take their choice to own a firearm for self-defense away when we have such a major criminal problem in South Africa. So I see that this is the one thing that can unite South Africa in a certain degree. and that there is a groundswell of opposition against this bill at all levels of society. And I think the majority of South Africans, even if you don't even own a gun, there are people that I know that have said to me they don't own a firearm, they might never own a firearm, but they believe in the right of a person to choose to own a firearm for self-defense purposes or other purposes. And they believe that this is not just about gun control, it's about control. And so that's the one positive thing I have seen, Scott, is that all walks of society have really been united against this bill, which is, I think, a really positive thing. And we've seen that when civil society unites against something like this, that government will back down. They have to back down because it's the electorate. They're dealing with the electorate, and they're dealing with law-abiding citizens saying, this is our right, this is where we make our stand now against this type of bill.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
Well, clearly with the crime rate in South Africa, it makes no sense at all to bring in a bill like this. Now,
absolutely.
Where are we right now in terms of the process in bringing this law? Because I think you've got, as you said, till early July to put in submissions to basically say this is why it's a bad idea, haven't you?
Correct. So 4th of July is basically the end of it. So we as SAGA are busy with submissions. Many other organizations are busy with submissions at the moment. And we're going to lodge our submissions. There's a number of objections. So where we are is really the early stages of this bill, as I indicated earlier, with the comments and submissions. So 4th of July is the cutoff date, and we have to make sure, and everyone who wants to object against this bill must make sure that their submissions have been emailed or hand-delivered to the Civilian Secretariat for Police, so that they make their voice heard, they make their concerns heard about this bill. So we're on the early stages still of the process in that, Scott.
Right. Now, can you outline for people watching the live stream and people who watch this video later, what are the main changes that have been made with the Firearms Control Amendment Bill of 2021, just so we understand the implications?
Sure. So as everyone knows, they're removing the right to self-defense, which is entrenched or what is covered in terms of Section 13 and 14 to a certain degree as well. So what they're saying is you may no longer own a firearm for self-defense. So that is obviously one of the main pressing issues. However, the bill is all-encompassing and it affects every single level of society. For instance, the collectors, Section 17 licenses, collectors have just been repealed completely, struck out completely for no good reason. And the collectors they keep our cultural heritage. Our public museums and that can't retain firearms correctly anymore. So private collectors are the only ones now retaining our cultural heritage. And all people in every level of South Africa at some point in our history own firearms for whatever reason. Section 15 and 16 are affected. So dedicated sport shooters, dedicated hunters, occasional sport shooters are affected. Occasional hunters are affected in that they're limiting the number of firearms you can own. And it might sound okay to limit firearms for dedicated sport shooters, but it's not. I compete in different disciplines and different fields, and I need a number of firearms to do that. I belong to different organizations, and if the bill gets passed, I would have to choose which sort of organization I want to belong to. Whereas at the moment I have freedom of choice, freedom of association, which is a constitutional right. I can choose which organization or belong to 3 or 4 organizations and compete in all those organizations or collect. Then businesses are severely affected. No thought has been given to businesses. It's far-reaching as the film industry. So there are firearm businesses in South Africa, aside from security companies obviously affected as well. There are firearm businesses in South Africa, such as in the film industry, that will be severely affected by this bill. Again, reduction in amount of ammunition they can have, transportation of firearms. The whole film industry and acting profession would be affected by this bill. Firearm dealerships would be affected. Training providers that do competency training would be affected. Corporate entities that do these fun gun shoots would be affected. So it's an all-encompassing bill across the board. Reloading is affected. Many of us have to reload for firearms with sort of, you can't find ammunition for certain firearms, or long-range precision shooters reload ammunition to get accuracy from their firearms. They would be affected because reloading has been repealed completely. You can't reload unless you manufacturer. So the private citizens' rights to reload has been affected. One of the big issues is the fact that we won't be allowed to train any young sport shooters or hunters, unless they were 16 years of age or more. To give example, a lot of our international sport shooters become international sport shooters at a fairly young age of 14 or 15 or 16, are very well developed by that age. My daughter was competing with us in sport shooting around about 8-9 years of age. If this bill gets passed, that would come to an end. Currently, you can also apply for competency for firearm at a younger age, as long as there's compelling reasons, such as your dedicated sport shooter or dedicated hunter. So all of that will be severely affected as well. So it's across the board bill. And I've said this before, although there's been a huge focus on self-defense, which absolutely it's a pressing issue, but we mustn't forget that it affects a lot more than just self-defense. It's affecting, as I said, sport shooters, hunters, collectors, and all the businesses out there as well. The economic ramifications are severe. Economic ramifications for the film industry, especially in the Western Cape, which is a big part of our economy, will be severely affected by this bill. Economic ramifications for firearm dealerships. Sport shooters spend a lot of money in developing good quality firearms, good quality scopes, developing loads, buying, reloading ammunition. So it's really all-encompassing, Scott, and across the board. The entire scope. It's just I say that's why we say we object to entire bill. It's unworkable. It doesn't make sense. You haven't consulted with us as stakeholders, and you've just tried to pass a bill, put through a bill that has no sort of scientific research or background or economic reports on it. No one has spoken to the film industry. No one has spoken to the firearm dealerships or various organizations to get some impact studies on the economic changes that will affect our economy. And here we need money in our economy at the moment, going through COVID, the lack of tourism, that we need to ensure that every ounce of what we can get in South Africa's economy is continuing.
You know what I find extraordinary, Damian, is that the ANC government this year in the budget raised their security costs by billions of rands and lowered the funding for the police at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, clearly they recognize that there's a problem with crime, because that's why they're raising their own security costs. But, then they're disarming the rest of the population. And
Absolutely.
I'd go one further than that. If you look what happened with Senekal, with Brendan Horner, the two guys who were arrested for murdering him were let off on bail because apparently the DNA didn't match these two guys. Now, we know that the police fiddle with evidence. We know that this is part of their mandate. Some police, I'm saying, and this is why things come unstuck. And now you've got the situation in Piet Retief where 4 white farmers are facing murder charges because of what happened on that farm, where 2 brothers, one shot the other brother apparently, and he was firing away with his gun, and one of the farmers shot and killed this guy. But all 4 farmers have now been basically taken in on murder charges, which basically mean you cannot defend yourself. It's crazy.
Look, yeah, I agree. I mean, the VIP protection thing, that is insanity. On the one hand, to say to private law-abiding citizens, we want to remove away Section 1314 and your right to choose to firearm, purchase a firearm, use a firearm, or possess a firearm for self-defense, and then suddenly increase the protection of the top politicians. It's just I can't understand how you can't see that as being diabolical, and it's just crazy. And then at the same time reduce the police budget, and I say many police officers speak to, are friends of mine, and I know them, and they're always complaining about resources, lack of resources. I mean, even my own police station at one stage had 1 operating police van for a huge area, and it just doesn't. I can't see how these top politicians sitting in ivory towers don't understand what's happening on the ground, and that they should be reducing their VIP protection. They don't need major teams of 16 to 20, 10, special force, task force, or VIP protection, police officers protecting them. They should rather be putting that into putting more police officers out there, more feet on the ground, more police vans, get more resources, get that special task force unit up and running again for illegal firearms. We support these task force units that need the resources. There are police officers out there that are trying to do their best under circumstances, it's just that there's a lack of resources going to them, and it's just a sad indictment on our government that they're just not allocating the resources like they should be, and in protecting themselves, whereas the ordinary law-abiding citizen and police officers themselves are unable to protect themselves on a daily basis. It's a shocking state of affairs in my view. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. What about the situation where people have been arrested when they're acting in self-defense?
Look, my experience, I can only talk about my own personal experiences, and we have represented clients who have used firearms legitimately in self-defense, and it depends a lot on the circumstances of the situation. And I do a lot of talks about self-defense and use of firearms in self-defense, and each situation is judged on its own merits. And I have had clients and friends who have used their firearms in self-defense and were not arrested at the site. The police could clearly see it was an act of self-defense. All the suggestions were there that it's self-defense, and the client was not arrested. I have had clients arrested as well, and then we had them released very quickly. I've had clients warned to appear in court, and we resolved it before court appearances. So it's very much depending on the circumstances, and unfortunately, there's no hard and fast rules when it comes to the use of firearms in self-defense. And I know, clients don't like to hear this, but each situation is judged on its own merits. As long as you can show there's an unlawful imminent attack against you, my experience has been generally the police act very reasonably and in a lot of situations considerately, and they understand the circumstances, and they do their jobs correctly. That's my personal experience. I can only talk from my own personal experience, and I can't talk for other experiences in that, because my dealings with the police, I've always found them to generally act fairly and reasonably with the situation. And we've been involved in situations where our clients have used their guns in self-defense in serious situations. And as I say, generally I've found a reasonable experience. But there are, as you know, there are situations out there that have been terrible and unreasonable, but I can't comment on those, and unfortunately, Scott, yeah.
Right. Well, it is sad that there's some bad eggs out there, because they're ruining the reputation of everybody else in the police service.
Absolutely.
That's a tragedy, the whole thing. Now, let's get back to the FCA bill. What are what are Saga's main issues with the bill?
Okay.
One is self-evident, but carry on.
Yeah. So first of all, the lack of stakeholders engagement, as I mentioned before. So that is a main issue for us. We're meant to be living in a democratic society where we're led to believe that the government will consult with us, and they haven't consulted with us. So that is a major issue for us, and a main bone of contention. It's not like the Civilian Secretary for Police and the National Commission does not know us. I mean, I have met the National Commissioner personally. I've dealt with all levels from the minister down, on behalf of Saga and personally. So it's not that the government does not know about us, is not aware of us. So that is a major point. Obviously self-defense, and obviously all the other issues that I've said to you before about the reduction in the firearms and the dedicated sport shooting and hunting being severely affected, and the whole economy being affected. So we're doing a very comprehensive objection to the bill. We object, first of all, to the bill entirely, but we're going to make submissions against the bill. But in fact, all of it is unworkable and is not rational at all. It's just not rational. Nothing makes sense to us, and nothing seems to be working. I mean, the sort of concept is that trying to reduce crime and trying to reduce illegal firearms, but they're not. They're going after soft targets again. So we're doing a comprehensive objection to it, dealing with every single issue in the bill and comprehensively dealing with each issue. But we're objecting it out of hand in its entirety.
Right. So why is it important to have the choice whether to own a firearm or not in South Africa?
Well, there are constitutional rights. You just, for instance, say you want to choose to own a firearm for self-defense purposes. You have a right to life. You have a right to defend your life. Your right to safety and security. And we can't rely on the police, unfortunately, for safety and security. Even in the most democratic, societies where the police force works for you, you cannot rely on the police. The police are generally responders to crime. So you are the first line of defense. So absolutely the right to life and the right to defend your life with a firearm, if that's your choice. Then if you want to choose to own a firearm for sport shooting purposes, hunting purposes, you have the right to choose that. You have a right to freedom of association in our Bill of Rights. So I choose to do sport shooting. I respect people that play golf. I don't play golf, but I respect people that play golf and other sports. My sport of choice is sport shooting. I enjoy sport shooting. I enjoy shooting different types of firearms. My big sport is cowboy action shooting, and I enjoy shooting Old West type firearms. And that's what makes it interesting for me. And that's sort of what, I run a busy legal practice, and that's sort of what, it sort of gives me sort of a peace of mind and a fun activity is sport shooting. And then there are those that want to collect firearms for investment purposes or for cultural heritage. And I'm also belong to a collector association, and I'm interested in historical firearms, whether it be from Zulu War area, or Boer War area, or World War I or World War II, whatever era. They're interesting, and a lot of people find interest, and that's again my right to freedom of association. I have the freedom to belong to a collectors association and collect interesting artistic. I mean, some of these firearms are amazing. Some of these firearms have intricate engraving. Holland shotguns are valuable. So there are a lot of us out there that collect firearms for that reason, because they are interesting and they're different and they're investment. I mean, there are some of my clients that invest millions of rands in firearms and that. Then, of course, if you want to make a living in the industry, in the firearms industry, that's your choice again. You have a choice to earn a living in South Africa in terms of Bill of Rights. And if you choose to go into the industry and choose to, for instance, be a security company, that which is obviously a huge thing in South Africa at the moment, that's your freedom to choose that. Or training providers that want to give firearm training and competency in training and show people how to use firearms safely. That's your choice again. Or if you happen to be in the film industry and you want to be able to supply firearms to the film industry and make a living out of that, which is quite big, as you know, in the Western Cape, that's your choice again. And all of this is held in our Bill of Rights ostensibly, in terms of our Constitution. So it's vital that you have the freedom of choice. If we don't have the freedom of choice, then we're moving to something that's completely different, and we're no longer in a democratic society anymore. And then we're in a type of Nazi Germany type state, whatever. So it's not, as I said before, not just about gun control. It's controlling the citizens, and government should never, control citizens. We should have the freedom of choice, which is what our Constitution gives us, the freedom of choice to choose if we want to own a firearm for whatever means, legal means I'm talking about, and law-abiding citizens.
Well, it's an interesting point you raise about Nazi Germany, because if you look at what happened in the late 1930s, if you look at what happened in communist Russia, if you look at what happened in other countries where the government took away the right to own arms before effecting a genocide against people. And that was the process that they went through.
Yes.
You've got the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. You've got those literally millions of people who were killed by the communists under Stalin in the early 1900s. But before they did that, they both removed the right of private citizens to have guns, which meant they could not defend themselves. And that's another really serious issue. Now, just talking about the historic, I'm a historian, so I love the history
Mm,
of South Africa.
mm,
And
mm.
do you have any of the old German Mausers that the Boers used during the Boer War?
Not myself personally. I've sort of been more interested in black powder, muzzle loaders type firearms, and uh, Webley revolvers and that type of stuff. So, not myself personally, but I can see obviously. I mean, collecting that is another art on its own. Collecting different Mauser action rifles.
Yeah.
There are people that I know that collect those. It's a well-made weapon. So absolutely, I don't understand that. Why one would collect that. And I'm sort of more interested in other types of firearms, and as I said to you, cowboy action type firearms, single action revolvers, and that type of stuff. I enjoy shooting. It's very different. I started off as a youngster, with obviously modern semi-automatic pistols and that type of stuff, and then never thought I would own a revolver until my uncle immigrated to New Zealand, and he left a 38 Special revolver, which I reluctantly applied for the license for and retained. But when I got involved in cowboy action shooting, suddenly, you need two single action revolvers, and suddenly it became totally fascinating. It's totally different to shoot a single action firearm or lever action rifle. You're so involved in the working, making that firearm work. Semi-automatic pistol, works on its own to a certain degree. So I enjoy the historical element, the historical, firearms and using them. It takes you back, to a different era completely.
Yeah. Well, I am a numismatist. I collect old coins, and
Mm,
I often
yes,
hold a coin in my hand, which might be, say, 1850 or something like that. And I
yes,
think back to those times, and you wonder who actually had that coin in their hand back then.
absolutely.
It is a fascinating sort of feeling, taking yourself back in time like that.
Yeah, if that coin could talk, where would it say where it went?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah,
The same with
absolutely.
firearms. You don't know where they've been, if they've been used or who used them. I've been quite fortunate that in my family, there's a .22 Remington bolt action rifle, which was owned by my opa, and it was given down to my grandfather, to my uncle, and to me. So I'm the fourth generation, and hopefully my daughter or son will be the next generation to use that weapon. And it's amazing to be able to hand things down like that. And that again, would, if this bill gets through, that would be affected completely. That handing down of something that's been treasured in the family for generations. It just would take it away completely. So I understand completely what you're talking about there. Yeah.
Would you have to hand in a gun like that if this law goes through?
Well, you see that is one of the elements that is completely missing from the bill, is the lack of compensation. The lack. I don't even want to go there actually to try and sort of give any rational reason behind it, but yeah, I mean, what would happen? Would you then have to hand in all your firearms? I don't know how government's going to deal with it, how the police are going to deal with it. The police can barely deal with the last two amnesties and the volumes. I mean, I went to my own DFO recently to renew some of my licenses, and it's one of the bigger police stations in the Western Cape, and they were completely overwhelmed by the last two amnesties, and we're not even dealing with the potential millions of firearms that would have to be handed in, and security elements. The police don't have the capacity to deal with the volume of firearms, secure those firearms. There will be just so many firearms that would go missing through the system and walk out the door, and they just put the police stations at high risk. It just would be absolutely, there'll be targets. I mean, that's the other thing. There'll be complete targets for criminals.
You
Criminals will
raise a
know,
very good point there.
yeah,
You raise it because
yeah,
what you're actually doing is you're taking away guns which are legally owned, which are stored safely, which are not
yeah,
dangerous, um,
yeah,
and you're putting them into the hands of the police, who often hand them out to criminals, who will then use those same guns to kill people. So
unfortunately, yes,
you're actually exacerbating an already bad situation.
correct. Yeah, I think these amnesties have actually exacerbated the problem. I mean, I've been there. So the difference with me, with perhaps from other organizations, as a practice attorney, I'm in the trenches with my clients. So if my client wants to go hand in a firearm in terms of an amnesty, and I went with clients, some clients wanted me to go with them to hand in their firearms in terms of the amnesty. And I went through the system and I could see the police do not have adequate safekeeping. The people at the top may think so, but if you speak to the people on the ground, the actual police officers that are dealing with it, they are stressed at stress levels. They were at stress levels through these amnesties, try and figure out how they're going to protect these firearms, how they're going to safekeep these firearms. Some of the facilities are not adequate. They don't have. It's again two different laws sometimes. We would have to ensure that our firearms are secured correctly, and that's correct. But sometimes the police safekeeping facilities are not up to scratch and not up to what they should be. So absolutely, it would just be mayhem. I don't think, even with the best intentions on the part of the current police at a ground level and provincial level, they would not be able to handle the situation. Maybe if we were in another country where the hundreds of thousands of police officers that can prepare to do the admin and enough safekeeping facility, but never, I can't see it ever happening in South Africa. I can't see the police being able to handle the volumes of firearms. And I think they don't want to. The police on the ground level do not want to deal with the situation because they understand at the ground level that it's impossible. It's just literally impossible. If you look at the expired license situation that we've dealt with over the years, there's anywhere from 400,000 to 500,000 people sitting with expired licenses, and only of that 60, 70, 80,000 perhaps have used the amnesties. And again, it's law-abiding citizens that use the amnesties, not criminals. I don't think the police could ever handle those volumes. It would collapse the entire police system. They wouldn't be able to do any combating of crime, which is the real issue. Combat crime. Get out there and combat crime.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't go after law-abiding citizens that own legal firearms. Combat crime, that is your duty. That's the duty of the police, is to combat crime and get out there. And we're willing to help you combat crime. We're willing to assist. We're willing to assist the police with training. We're willing to help the police in any way possible.
Well, it's interesting you talked about gun licensing, because the Freedom Front Plus, one of their members of parliament, through a request, was actually taken into the gun licensing department. And he took a video, and you can see these piles of license applications were everywhere. Not being attended to at all. They were just sitting there in piles.
Yes.
And it's crazy. How can you run a country like that?
I've been dealing with CFR and the police for about 11 years now as a speciality, 11, 12 years. And I've seen the system go down over time and getting worse and worse and worse, in that the good caliber officers that were there, and there were many good caliber officers at CFR, where you could pick up the phone and speak to someone and say, listen, we've got this problem. How do we resolve this problem? There are very few left there that you can deal with and you can speak to and email and get results and get things done. So it's a really sad state of affairs. Look, we've had various reports over the years, so it's almost like a full circle type situation where every sort of cycle, every sort of 3 to 5 years, we come back to the same situation. The then minister in, if I recall, December 2010, apologized to everyone about the sad state of affairs of CFR, and he promised to do and fix it, and there was suddenly a spike in productivity at CFR at all levels within SAPS when it comes to licenses. And then 2015 comes around again, and we have a similar situation. The building that the poor people working in there at CFR has been in disarray for many years. So it's not the first time that we have seen this. It's a continuous cycle, and I feel very sorry for the people that work in that building and under the conditions they have to work in that building, and overwhelmed with the paperwork, and the system is so fragile that it takes an amnesty with 60,000 or another 20,000 or 80,000, whatever, just that extra top, and it almost like tips over completely. So it's a picture that we've seen, a movie that we've seen before, Scott. In the last 10, 12 years, it's the same situation, every cycle, so to speak. So it's not surprising to us that are involved in the industry, not surprising to us that see it on a daily basis, that deal with the frustrations of clients, deal with the frustrations of our members, saying why is the system not working for me? We're taxed. We're trying to pay. We pay taxes for this thing, but the system is not working. The administrative system is not working. And again, I say we have tried many times to assist. I don't know if you know, Scott, for a license or competency application, the amount of paperwork that you've got to put in, and even for someone that's already on the system, for a license renewal, the amount of paperwork. Why should one have to put, and that's one thing that all the organizations and SAGA as well is saying, let's license the person. You know how much paperwork you'd cut out if you license the person. There's a two-tier system, as you probably know. One applies to your competency and then your license. Right. And the competency is really meant to deem you competent. There's background checks, there's references that get put in, you've written exams, you've passed a practical test on the knowledge and the use of the firearm and the law, and you're deemed competent. But the competency actually is just almost a stumbling block to the next step. It's something you've got to jump over, another hoop you have to jump over to get a license. Now, if government and SAPS and everyone focused on deeming the person competent, if Scott wants to own a firearm, if I want to own a firearm and they deem me competent, then you should just register the firearms. There are many European countries in the same situation. I have a friend in Germany. That's it. If you deem competent by the German authorities, obviously every 5 or 10 years you redo that competency, and then you just register those firearms to the person. Because if I'm a dedicated sport shooter and I own a number of firearms, I'm going to make 100% absolutely certain that I protect those firearms. I'm going to be more responsible. I'm going to be 1,000 times more responsible because of those firearms. I want to protect those firearms. And if the police know me, and my police station does know me, they know me very well, and they know that I'm a competent person, why must we have so much paperwork? And that's what's killing the system, is the amount and volume of paperwork. Why should there be reams of paperwork? And the problem, Scott, if you don't give them reams of paperwork, they use any trick in the book to try and refuse you, and they say, well, this wasn't there, you get refused. So then you land up appealing, and getting refused by the appeal board. So really, the one solution, the solution to the problem is license the person's competent, register the firearm. You would create so much less paperwork. It'll be much easier. And obviously, the next situation, electronic system. The Firearms Control Act does provide for electronic system. It is possible to have an electronic system. Look at e-filing. It's the one thing that SARS has done very well, is e-filing. If you have an e-filing system where at a station level they can upload documents, then it would work. The sad state of the affairs, I often go to these stations and they don't even have adequate computers, don't have adequate access to computers. And there are police officers that want to even work from home. I know police officers that would because of COVID. COVID obviously affected police stations dramatically with the shifts and that type of stuff, the number of people that can work in the police station. But there are many police officers that are very much willing in the firearm system, administration system, to work from home, but just can't, because the system just can't take that next level step to allow them to work from home. I mean, if you don't trust your own police officers to work from home, then that's a sad indictment on the whole system. Yeah. So the licensing system can be so streamlined, and it'd be much easier, and the data access would be much easier if it became electronic and you license the person. And of course, if the person breaks the law, that's the end. That's it. We don't want criminals owning firearms and that. So I think that is the real solution to this problem that we have in South Africa. And it just seems that government just does not want to take that step. And that step can be taken. And I'm absolutely certain the majority of the police that work within the administrative system would realize that would be a solution to the serious workload that they work under and short-staffed situation they work under.
I think part of the problem is called BEE, Black Economic Empowerment, when it comes to people working in the licensing department.
I don't know, Scott. I work with all police officers, and I can say to you, no matter who they are, what creed they are, all of them, a majority of them are trying to do their best under the dire circumstances and difficult circumstances. As I've got great respect for those police officers that are trying their best. I deal with all levels of the police on a regular basis, and there are police officers at all level and all creeds, all colors, all races that are really trying their best, and just have difficulty, trying to get the right adequate resources. And we spoke earlier about the billions that have been taken away from them, less police officers, less resources for them, and if government just allocated, reduced the VIP protection. Why does our Minister of Police need so many VIP officers, protect him? Surely, 2 or 3 at the most should be enough, right. And get those other billions to where it should be, to the police on the ground. Let's combat crime. Let's help the system. Let's fix the system. And they don't seem to be able to take that step, Scott.
Right. Now, I've got a couple of questions or comments that have come through here related to this, and I just want to put those to you. Sure. Philippe, who I know very well, he's been a member or a subscriber to Lovey Life for years now, and he's a top physician in the UK. He's got property in South Africa, and he's got guns in South Africa. And he writes, "I'm a dedicated hunter and should be fast-tracked for license renewals. I have been waiting for nearly 2 years now. No reply to written inquiries. I paid for this service, complied with all the hoops. For what?" Isn't this the typical frustration of people?
Absolutely. My personal license application, my first one took 18 months, which I suppose is, I don't know, I think it's not really fair, in a society. And the police are obviously meant to turn around things in 90 days originally. Now it's become 120 days. But absolutely, that is that's just unreasonable and uncalled for. And what we do almost on a daily basis is lodge complaints and email the provincial SAPs, because the renewals of licenses are dealt at a provincial level. New license applications go to CFR, so it's a provincial level where there's a lack of resources again, where there's just not enough police officers, attending to those applications. But yeah, absolutely. Again, as I say, if we license the person, there will be no reason to renew that license, no reason for that dedicated hunter, Philippe, to wait 2 years. And it's completely unreasonable, and it's just but it's something we deal with on a daily basis. I've got a whole list of queries I've got to deal with almost on a daily basis. People that email and say, "Listen, I've just started getting no response. No one picks up the phone. No one replies to my email." And we do get, when a lawyer is involved, that's often when we do get responses, which shouldn't be. Why should a law-abiding citizen who's paid for the service, have to go and pay a lawyer now to send a letter or send an email? It's just unfair and unreasonable completely.
Right. Now, I've got another comment here which has been directed to me. It's not related to our discussion. I just want to talk to that very quickly, Damian. Daniel van der Westhuizen says, as taxpayers, your money gets used to fund terrorism in Gupta leaked accounts, Sinjan distribution. Fight them in court, I'll be there to testify with all the evidence. Well, Daniel, if you send me an email, and I'll get one of the moderators to put my email address in the side chat, and just give me a brief on what you're talking about here, and maybe we'll get you in on a live stream to blow the cover or blow the story if it's something we think's worthy of that. Okay, so continuing on, what can we expect to see from SA or Saga in the future?
Okay, so we, from Saga's perspective, as I say, with the submissions now, so if you want to look at the legal side of things now, so we are obviously going to be putting our submissions in, and then the next level is we do lobby Parliament, we do lobby the politicians, we do lobby Portfolio Committee, and what that means is that we go and meet with them, we speak to them, and give them a different understanding and viewpoint, and explain to them why we think this bill is not reasonable, not workable. I think a lot of the politicians do understand there's a problem here, But our job is to in a lot of ways, educate and assist the politicians and assist the people in government to understand what is wrong with this bill. So that is what I do, and that is what a lot of my trustees do, and a lot of my SAGA representatives do. We go and seize people, we go and speak to people, and all of us is an unpaid situation. We don't get paid salaries. We're a non-profit organization, and this is what we do. And that's why we sort of need member support. We need people to join us and join our cause. Then, if we see that the government, despite us being reasonable and despite us engaging with them, are not interested in listening, then ultimately we have to land up in court. We have to land up ultimately in the Constitutional Court, and we will fight this bill at every level. There are certain avenues that we're looking at the moment. There's certain documentation that government has not been fit to give us. There's certain applications that potentially can be brought for different reasons: access information, documentation. Government supposes it based this bill on white papers, based this bill on the so-called WITS report. We haven't seen those documents. So if government is not prepared to give us documents, we're going to go to court. We're going to go and get a court order against government to release those documents, even if it means we have to go to the Constitutional Court, because we have a right as citizens, as organizations, to see the underlying documents, to see the decision making. How did government come to this decision? What committees were formed? What discussions were held in the background before this bill was brought? So we have, as SAGA, been involved in court cases before, and we will continue to be involved in court cases. And yes, it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of good advocates and a good counsel involved to take these matters to court. But that is what our prerogative is, and that obviously is the potential situation if government does not see sense. And we've seen it. It definitely can work. The courts are still very reasonable, and you can approach the courts with reasonable arguments. And we're pretty confident we'll be able to get substantial arguments across to government, to the courts, to ensure that we get the right court orders against government to release the documentation we require, to show the courts that this bill is unworkable and should not pass muster whatsoever. So it's an endless battle. It is a battle. It is a constant work. There are a lot of people in the background behind me that are working on a regular basis and have been working for 20, 30 years, 40 years in the game. We've got really good international connections throughout the world that are supporting us and keeping us aware of what's happening internationally. The World Forum on Sport Activities, we're a member of. We have representation in Europe. So we've got really solid backing, and we're very fortunate to have a very solid base. And there are a lot of good lawyers and advocates and law students out there that have helped us along the way and continue to help us along the way free of charge. It's amazing how much people have come forward, attorneys, retired attorneys. I don't want to mention them without their permission, but there are a lot of people out there that have certainly helped us. So it's a united front, and there's a lot of positives, I said, that have come out of this. And I've been blown away by the amount of people that have reached out to me, that are willing to fight the good fight and help us through this. And it's very encouraging that people have come to the fore. So the end is not near. And I think, again, if we all unite against this bill, whether you want to own a firearm or not, it's not about gun control, it's about control. And we certainly, as SAGA, are there, as a South African Gun Owners Association, we're there to fight until we get the results, And we have had results before over the years, and we'll continue to have results. We appreciate all our member support and all the support that I've received, and emails and WhatsApp messages and phone calls, and people have very much come to the fore to assist us and have really helped us through this process and continue to help us through this process, which is fantastic. That's our duty, that's our job, that's our core job to our members, is to ensure that they keep their right to choose a firearm for self-defense, hunting, sport shooting, collecting, business purposes. Whatever the law-abiding citizen wants to do with the firearm, we will continue to fight and serve their interests to ensure that they retain those rights.
Right. Now, I just want to address the side chat, and we're having a bit of a troll attack at the moment. A few trolls coming in, and all the trolls, that's what you guys can do. You can go and pog my horn. Look it up. Okay, sorry about that. All right, and to the moderators, keep up the great work. I'm keeping an eye on what's happening in the side chat, and we don't often get troll attacks, but I think there's just one person using multiple names who's all he's doing is he's getting blocked. He'll never be able to comment on our channel again, so it's a bit self-defeating, but anyway, it is what it is. Okay, let's continue. What does SAGA advise that citizens do in order to fight this FCA bill?
So you have a right as a sort of citizen to submit or make your own submissions against the bill, and I encourage all citizens of South Africa and all our members to make as many submissions as they want to, logical submissions, factual submissions, and obviously put those submissions in. So yeah, the Civilian Secretariat is there, and its email address did collapse at one stage, but they are definitely accepting submissions. So continue to get those submissions coming in. I think the more submissions there are, the more the government sees that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people against this bill, the better for it. So law-abiding citizens of South Africa continue to put those submissions in. And of course, support your organizations. There are many multiple organizations in South Africa, and there are obviously different interest groups, whether you a hunter, a sport shooter, collector, join one of the groups, get involved. And that's what a democratic society is about, is holding government accountable. And the way you hold government accountable is by getting involved. Let's not be apathetic. Let's get involved. And help us out. You know, if you've got something to say, something to do, join us, join SAGA, join one of the organizations, get involved. And I think that is what a sort of developing democracy does: is the citizens get involved, let their voice be heard, and make a noise. Let's put it this way: march on Parliament peacefully with a peaceful protest if needs be. Tell your local councillor you're unhappy about this bill, and make that viewpoint come across.
Right. Well, I just have to say that Philippe, who I mentioned earlier, said he's a member of SAGA, and he gave you a huge rap. He said you're a fantastic group.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of Philippe.
So there you go. Now, Beverly Rossetti has asked, I've got a couple of questions here in the side chat I'll just put to you.
Sure.
May I ask, why does Damian support the hunting of animals as a sport? I.e., why are commercial hunters permitted?
Look, I want to obviously just differentiate between sport shooting and hunting. So, look, I respect hunters. These are hunters. There's a big industry, and if you look at game farming, and I have a lot of clients that are involved in game farming, if you look at South Africa and our game that we had in South Africa around about the 1950s and 1960s, and the very little game that we had left by that period, the game farmers and the hunters have really reintroduced game farms. I've been on a lot of friends' game farms before, and they're stocked with game. And if it wasn't for the hunting industry, we wouldn't have the type of game that we have today. There's obviously economics involved. So just to give an example, just for instance, you've got to have a hunter that comes from overseas and he wants to hunt kudu or buck or whatever. There is not just him that's paying dollars or pounds or euros to come and hunt. There's a whole support base to that hunter. There's the trackers, the local trackers that are tracking the game for that hunter. There's the professional hunters that go with that client. There's the people that deal with the meat. So there's a whole industry that's behind it, and I think we must be thankful in South Africa and internationally for what the game farmers, the hunters have done for the game. I think if we didn't have them, we would probably have very little game out there. And we are very fortunate that our game farms are generally very well stocked these days. So there's a part for that, and that is respect, someone who hunts, and I respect game farmers for what they do, and they create they're major nature conservationists as well. A friend of mine who helped establish the Cape Leopard Trust, he owns a game farm, and because I think hunters are very much in touch with nature more than us city goers are. They're out there in the veldt. They're part of nature. They get to see nature that we don't see anymore, and they're much more in touch with nature. And I think they feel a lot more for nature, and that's why hunters have been so supportive of developing game in South Africa. That we're very fortunate. We have a very rich game farming industry in South Africa, and there's a huge economy behind it. There's billions of rands that come in because of hunting and game farming and that, and that's creating jobs and industry for many hundreds of thousands of people in South Africa.
Right. Well, I find it interesting because apparently Ramaphosa has got a hunting game farm as well. So
I believe so, yes.
I'll be surprised if he's happy about this bill. Now, I've got another question here from JJ Streicher, who says, will SAGA be pushing back against South African Police Service to take ground, as in licensing the person, not the firearm, etc.? Or are they just simply going to fight the bill for the rules to stay the same?
So one of our submissions I mentioned earlier. I mentioned earlier that's what SAGA stands for, license the person. So one of our submissions will be license the person and register the gun. So absolutely, we're 100% behind that, and we've been behind that for many years, and that is our ultimate goal in South Africa, is to have a Firearms Control Act that licenses the person, and that makes complete sense to me. So I've given examples of clients and friends of mine overseas in Germany and other countries where they license the person, not the firearm. So absolutely, that is what we want to see, and that's exactly what we're going to be putting in our submission as well, that we want to license the person, and that will be, we've said that in Parliament before, and we continue to say that we want to license the person. So I agree completely with that, and I'm behind that.
Right. Now, Philippe's actually made another comment about hunters. He says, without hunters, a lot of game would not be around. Game farmers would not invest in the industry. Hunters use cameras too, and we eat what we shoot. We hunt fair chase, not slaughter. And there's actually a very interesting theory that Ron Thompson, who I had on a live stream about a year ago now, I guess, but he was saying that with elephants, if you don't hunt elephants in places like Botswana, they're going to destroy all the vegetation, and you actually need to hunt to bring their numbers down because they're just growing too fast. Any thoughts on that?
I can't mention elephants. My wife loves elephants. I don't want to mention any elephants. So, look, I understand that, and obviously that is the case, unfortunately. My wife, I say, I love elephants as well. I love rhino as well. But unfortunately, that is the situation sometimes, is they can be very destructive, and all animals can be destructive to a certain degree. And I respect that. As I said, I respect that. If that is the situation, and unfortunately you have to cull elephants, that is the unfortunate situation. And I just hope my wife is not watching this at the moment. So that is a situation, unfortunately, and that's what happens in a lot of situations. You have to unfortunately cull animals, and that it's part of nature. In nature, animals would have died, naturally, and sometimes they don't anymore. So there has to be some sort of trying to equalize the ecosystem, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Look, I've got one final question for you. How can we get hold of you and join SAGA?
Okay, so we have an active website. It's www.saga.org.za, and Facebook. Facebook, we are Gun Lobby SAGA. So we are obviously on those two platforms. Of course, you can also get hold of us on the office number as well. You can email us as well. And I receive many emails from our members as well. So I can post later on, if you don't mind, our email address, if you need the email address. Or if you want our phone number, we can post that as well later on, if you don't mind, Scott.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, we can put those details below the video in the description.
Thank you.
If you just Skype them to me, and I'll put them in there.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right. Look, Damian, it's been very, very interesting talking to you about this, and we did meet briefly on Saturday
Yes.
in Cape Town at
Yes.
the
There was too much
protest.
noise happening there. Yes.
But
Yes.
thank you so much for joining us
Thank you,
tonight.
Scott. Thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate the opportunity as well, and thank you for your time, and thanks to your viewers as well, your listeners as well, and I appreciate all the input and all the comments as well. And thank you again.
Right. Now, I'll send you the link to this live stream. So if you want to share it on your Facebook platform or just share it out wherever, feel free to do that.
Thank you very much.
Alrighty. Okay, I'm just going to address the side chat and people watching, then we'll wrap up this live stream. Okay, first off, guys, I just want to thank the moderators for doing the great job that they always do. And I see we've had a bit of excitement on the side chat. We've clearly got at least one troll who's using multiple accounts to try and cause trouble. But my moderators, gee, they're on the job. They're professionals. They know how to sort out trolls who have all gone away now. So thanks, moderators. Well done. And thank you for everybody else who's joined us tonight. I hope you found the discussion interesting and informative. And I just want to close by saying thank you so much to our guest, Damian Enslin, for being with us tonight and explaining Saga's position on this new FCA bill, which hopefully will never see the light of day. Thank you, Damian. Take care.
Thank you, Scott. All the best to you. Have a good evening.
Okay. Bye for now. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up the live stream now, and I'll leave the side chat open for a few minutes so that you can say your goodbyes, etc. And Beverly Rossetti, I never said you're a troll. We've got rid of the trolls. You wouldn't be here if you were a troll. Okay. Yeah, look, look, my moderators look after trolls, and they do a great job. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up now. See you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, and just watch the lovinglifetv.com homepage or the alert on Loving Life YouTube for our live stream tomorrow. Take care, and don't forget to register on lovinglifetv.com and subscribe on Loving Life. Bye for now.